Cool.
Yep, I got it
So,
recording right now on Teams. So this is Mount Hood Community College with Sam and Travis doing a interview. So at your
I
discretion, man.
couldn't have said it better myself. All right. So, I'll just go into nice and easy with the first question. So let's first of all just introduce yourself. We know you're Travis at this point. What do you do? What's your position?
So my name is Travis Juhr. I am a alumni, graduated 2019, had a degrees in both networking and cybersecurity, have worked as a unified comms engineer, which is also voice, worked as a network engineer, worked currently as a security engineer, and do systems engineering and architecture. Went to DEF CON last year as a presenter and invented a new type of attack that I've dubbed as spear vishing and VoIP poisoning. And that was presented at the ICS Village. And currently, I'm waiting in the next day or two. I should be hearing from DEF CON if I'm going to be main stage talking about voice attacking and general voice systems vulnerabilities. So fingers crossed that works, but that's me in a nutshell.
Very nice. All right. So, what does the average day or week look like for you? Schedule, duties,
Mhm.
activities, hours, so on and so forth.
Sure. Having been worked at a couple of different places, the actual answer is always going to be it depends. But generally, you're going to go down two paths. And we've talked about this extensively with some of the hacker groups and the other engineers I've worked with. You generally have two paths. You have one path, which is usually called ops, operations. There's a couple of different terms. Usually that's more the role of the administrators, analysts, depending on everyone uses a non-standard structure. So those are the day-to-day guys. It's like, okay, there's a security alert, something's happened. If you want to keep, do you want to keep this just to cybersecurity type stuff, or do you want to go branch a little bit into the others because they kind of dance around each other quite a bit?
Very nice.
What do you want to do, Sam? Do you want to just stick with just isolate to cybersecurity, or do you want to, because a lot of these things kind of be interconnected, and
Hmm.
it's kind of
Well,
relevant.
for me, right now, I'm starting off with help desk stuff. I think I'm more so trying to go towards like a system administrator type role. Eventually, down the line, that's more of an end goal for me at some point once I've acquired enough experience in the field and whatnot. But my start point will definitely be likely help desk
Okay, so
system.
the question is more of like what do you want me to answer? Do you want me to answer only with my security hat, or do you want to answer with the other hats too?
Let's okay, we'll keep it simple. We'll do the security app then. Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
okay, yeah, that's fair. So yeah, it's still going to fall onto the operations people. So typically on the operations side, you're going to end up working as a SOC analyst, security operations center, and that's going to be first line of defense. Something pops on a SIEM or a sword saying, hey, there's some unusual behavior going on. There's a known hostile vector, possibly a digital signature that's popped, and then you'll, as the entry level role, you'll go and like snoop it out and be like, all right, let's check. Is it looking hostile? Is it maybe a false positive? Is it a true positive? And then the remediation steps from there. And typically, what I'll see for more entry level type of stuff in the security side on operations, you get a lot more of like security awareness training. You'll investigate phishing claims. It's kind of the I don't want to say grindy, but it is kind of it's a slow, steady pace of stuff coming in. So it tends to be, and then uh, if you go a notch up in, let's say, skill set, that tends to go down the route of like instant response, which is a little more like if the level one guys can't take a crack at it, they're not sure it'll escalate to you, and then you're like, all right, we've got maybe a real bad thing going on or something of that nature. And typically both will have a on call depending on the company. I've seen some have a on call that's been outsourced, some that's not, but that tends to be a little more hot and cold. Where okay, things are chill, then they're not chill for a while, then they're back to chill. So it's a little more of a sprinty style in operations. And then the other side of the house, which I generally go to, is engineering or like security architecture, which is less reactionary and more reactive or proactive type of stuff, which is like defensive architecture. So like, hey guys, we have the IoT devices and the production devices. Should they be able to talk with each other? No. Okay, cool. Let's build a firewall in between or some sort of security constructs. And you're just kind of like you're sort of zoomed out and it's more project level where you're not really going day to day, and it tends to be more consistent that you're just working on a project for days, weeks, months at a time. And typically what'll happen is the engineering department builds a system out, like here's a new firewall solution, CASB, cloud, whatever, and then we pass it over to the ops guys, like, all right, you guys run the show. And then every once in a while, they're like, hey, we need a new feature. And then you'll like build it, and test it, and then deploy it over to that side. That tends to be the relationship between the two. And then the path up, let's say from there, engineering tends to be like not much in terms of entry level. Some of it will be like firewall administration. I'll see it like the entry stuff if you're going that route, like perimeter security, have all sorts of fancy names. Web app filters, or web application firewalls, sort of things that are not like you're not checking things on the daily, but what you're doing is like, hey, are certificates installed correctly? Or is the SSL decryption functioning as we intend it? You kind of test your own systems to make sure that, you know, the factory is still working as it should. And then higher up, you go into more like stuff I'm doing, which is architectural documentation. You're like building brand new systems, or like, all right, the current one we're evaluating, it's not cutting the mustard. Let's start looking at other options. You know, should we go with a Sonic wall? Should we go with Cisco? And so that's the two major realms, generally engineering and ops. And with engineering being more steady and ops being a little more hot and cold. So that's sort of the daily. To say daily, that's kind of the general gist.
There's just so much variation that it's really just depends. It seems to depends on whether you're doing preventative measures or reactive measures too. That it could severely change the pacing of the work as well.
And something to kind of follow in with that, it's something that I've always been interested in is, and you know, anyone who's watching this recording, even yourself, there's always a sexiness that's with red teaming. Everyone wants to be the pen tester who I pwn the system, and well, yes, that's available. If you're looking for a job, defensive blue team is going to be like easily 60 to 70% of the job opportunities. It's pretty uncommon for people to hire pen testers right out of college or entry level. They generally want people to be defensive first, and then you learn to hack the systems a little more purple-ish, so to speak. And then the maturity to be able to actually effectively run a pen test and be a part of that team. There is entry roles, but those tend to be more like vulnerability management, which is like a fancy word of saying you're patching all the time. So, hey, there's a, you know, security hole with this current code. Hey, update that code to this version. So the like elite hacksaw, it's not typically seen in the field, not at an entry level.
That makes sense though. I mean, you as a pen tester, it'd be beneficial to have a understanding of the defenses first before you go on trying to penetrate those, essentially, if I understood that correctly.
Yep. There's also like a level of let's say emotional maturity and stuff. Because if you think of it like you own a bar, you want to, hey, is my bar secure? And someone comes in who's new and just wrecks the place, smashes bottles, and like, see, yeah, your bar sucks, and they walk out the door. You're like,
yeah,
well, technically I did hire you for that, but isn't there like a nicer way you could have done that? Because when you're blue team and some red teamer comes in and wrecks your shit, you're like, that's humble pie. And if they're like, hey man, we're here to help you to like, you know, we want to evolve so that next time you win instead of me, they're like, oh, all right, cool. There's a value. Like a business wants to pay for that. They don't want to pay for you to like spike the football, like do touchdown dance. Like, because I've seen people do that and like, bro, they're going to be pissed. And if they get you and they clown on you, like you deserve this. So there's a level of maturity that needs to come with that. Like, you know, once you get your stuff wrecked, you're like, all right, man, I don't want to spike the football. This is supposed to be a friendly, you know, game, not a dunking on kids or dunking on people.
Interesting. That is very funny. Let's see here. What was the next question? Okay, yeah. What do you like and dislike about your job?
The things I like, I really love engineering, and I love working with people who think radically. And the weird part about it is that students like you and other sort of fresh blood that comes in tend to think more radically than people that are currently in the market. And that's kind of weird to say because I was previously a paramedic, so I switched to IT. It was like, oh, this is where all the smart people are at. And like statistically, it's about the same. There's just an equal amount of dumb people and smart people, and whether people want to say that out loud. Um, so security is an interesting beast because, and you all will start seeing this after a while, is it has been around for I don't know, really it hasn't matured, but except for the last 10, 20 years at the most. And so a lot of companies didn't, there wasn't any talent, 20 years ago, all the cybersecurity certifications and degrees really didn't exist. And so the people that are in those jobs that are higher up now that are in security were like, I call them home bakes. They were previous people who were network administrators, maybe at the best, but more sysadmin type folks who don't really get security, but there was nobody else at the time. And so that sort of lack of experience has matured. Now, some people have grown and learned, but you'll see a lot. And so this is going into the dislike. You'll see a lot of people who are at that mid to upper level that are like, so what do you think about ciphers? I'm like, do you know what you're talking about? Because I don't think you do. So, and that makes it difficult for students. This is why I help out for you to get in, like find the magic words to get your first job. But so that's the dislikes, is that there is a old guard that needs to be removed, and I'm actively trying to boot people out as much as I can to make room for you folks who are trained properly, who think correctly, who use frameworks like NIST and whatnot, and like use it properly, MITRE ATT&CK. But the engineering is definitely fun to like see. Not only one, like when you see a good defensive structure where like, you go take a place that's not as big a fan, but like dumpster fire until like super stable, where everyone's like, it's Friday, and you're like, nothing's going on. Yep, I see the firewall. It's getting attacked, but it's knocking them down. You guys want to go have some beers? Like, we're good. Like, that's the cool part where you can like, just kick back. You hang out with other people. You talk about your crazy projects. Hey, what if we put this honeypot and then we like have it like spam them with like, weird Japanese anime? Like, oh yeah, let's do that. We do weird stuff, and that's the fun part when you get creative people that do wacky stuff. And I'm sure you guys as students have done, at least if you have personal projects. I'm all about that stuff. I love it. I love seeing your guys' weird stuff.
That's awesome. Wow. Okay. Let's see. What type of education, training, certifications, and prior experience is needed to best prepare for this occupation?
Honestly, just what you guys are doing right now. So there's two components that I'm a huge fan of. One, this is sort of outside of the school, is I'm a big fan of what I dub as hybrids. And what I see that, and that's the benefit of the community college, in my opinion. So I'm 39 now. So I graduated when I was 35, and I started when I was 33. So I'm not a spring chicken anymore. But what I like to see, another guy, his name was Taylor. We graduated together. He was an auto mechanic, and so he was really good. I like seeing people. I've seen other people who are musicians first. I've seen chefs. I've seen all sorts of weird stuff that people started from, and so they bring that like different kind of thinking into security and IT. They're like, well, when I was a chef, I baked this. And like, oh, cool. Yeah, no, we can totally do that. So I'm a big fan of that. Save for that, if you're fresh out of school, you're 18, 19, 20, whatever. The material that is at the school is actually very, very good. It standardizes and certifies. And I'm a big fan. I come from military aviation, did rescue, swim, and jump out of helicopters. And the only thing that kept me alive in the crew is that we had standards and we had documentation. Is the plane ready to fly? Will it crash when I'm in midair? Well, we have a document that we check. Is the engine connected? Yep. Do we have gas? Yes. And you take that mentality, and that's what you guys are getting through. And I got the same thing through the training, is like, here's a firewall. What is a firewall rule? What is an object? What is this? And like you bring that standardization, so that when I talk to you, Sam, I say, hey, the firewall rule needs to operate at layer 7. And you're like, I understand what that means, Travis.
Yeah.
And other people understand too. That is not very standardized out in the real world. So
Yeah, that
the
standardization must be like key, and especially in such a young field like cybersecurity too. Like
Mhm.
probably incredibly beneficial.
It keeps everyone on the same page, particularly when it's a dumpster fire is going down and people are panicking, which they do. Again, my experience from 911, when people panic, they generally lose their crap. But if you can at least be on the same page, hey Sam, the firewall is broken. You're like, well, we have like 10. So which one? The one. Oh no, yeah, which one? We have a lot. I mean, if I can say, okay, the northbound firewall on Azure is currently experiencing blah, blah, blah. You can be specific. We use standard terminology, standard things. I'm a big fan, and I think it's great. Like the stuff that you're learning is like vanilla is great. I know everybody's excited to go exotic. That's way wrong in IT. You if you wanted to drive from your house, go to downtown Portland, and if the roads were changed each time, you lose your mind. You're like, well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get on PAL or Division. I'll go on 205 and then 84. It's like standard. Okay, well the road's blocked at 84. Okay, cool. For some reason there's backup, and then you can kind of troubleshoot from there. But if everything's like pure chaos all the time, how are you going to fix something when I don't know, like there's supposed to be an engine here, but now there's a gas tank, like uh-oh.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So what you guys are getting, the standardization, the security frameworks and the certifications and the training is really, really good. And you should all lean into that. That's the real value is you walk into a place. Some people think it's a scary thing to be like, oh, I'm replaceable. Like, no, you actually want to be replaceable, but you want people to not want to replace you because someone leaves, because this is how generally you're going to get a job. Someone's going to leave, or sometimes a position opens up and they want to get a security engineer or an analyst and plop them in the gear and the gear starts going. They don't want to pick up and be like, oh, well, this one's kind of crooked and not really, we're going to find a way to fit this in. Like business don't want that. And honestly, as a teammate, I don't want that. I don't like guys who are homebrews. I'm not a fan. I love people like you all who are trained in a standard way. You have your certifications. So if I'm talking about something that's from the CCNA or Security Plus, I can use that terminology and I don't have to spend the next 10 minutes explaining, well, this is what a firewall does. It blocks the bad guys and keeps the good stuff in. And if I'm taking, because it happens quite a bit. So the benefit is what you're doing is great. But sometimes people will poo-poo on a little bit, but just ignore the haters.
Oh my God. Giving me so much right here. I could ask like 50 questions after each one of
Yeah,
these
feel free.
responses.
I got all day, so I could talk
Yeah.
all day too. So I'm an extrovert. My wife calls me a social butterfly, which is absolutely true. So, yeah, so it's all gravy, man.
Rare bird in IT as well too. Most people are pretty introverted, at least from my experience working in
Yeah,
IT so
well, and
far.
that'll also be a true thing. So here's a paradigm shift: is I was doing IT in like early 2000s, late 90s, and I got out because it was very much the old guard way of the sort of uber nerd, like, "Ugh, I know everything and you are beneath me." Like that kind of stuff was prevalent and acceptable, and nowadays it's very much flipped. If you want to make your in, be sociable as an IT person, and that will make you a lot of headway. Because the ways of like, oh Alice, you don't know how to install a printer, you're so stupid. Like that shit
Yeah.
doesn't apply anymore, and it never should have, quite frankly. And so the new guard people are like, hey, maybe we should not treat our customers like garbage. Like, oh, what a crazy thought.
Yeah, being social networking is key, I feel like in almost any industry. It
And
never
just
hurts
just
to
being nice, like going to an
and
interview and being honest. Hey, here's a question. Sam, how does this firewall work? And you're like, I don't know. I've had one of my interviews, they asked me a hard question and I was like, man, I don't know. They're like, okay, good. Like, we don't expect you to know that. We just wanted to make sure you'd be honest about that you didn't know.
it's a good point too, because I mean you can pretty much like you if you're like trying to fake it like that, in that circumstance, that could lead to if okay, this guy says he knows what he's doing, right? Okay, we'll trust him doing that. That could lead to serious issues later on, or it could just be time consuming, probably at the least worst case scenario.
Yeah, you can I can always train, and this is something I told Katrina in the interview, is like I can train someone to do something all day. It's no problem, but I can't train you to actually pull the trigger and try to do something and be honest. If you lie to me, like, all right, dude, I don't know where we're gonna go from here. You're a dishonest person. I don't know. Oh, the firewall's fine. Like, is it fine? You lie a lot, so
Yeah,
I don't know.
that was definitely, I had similar experience too, because I did management work in kitchens for about 6 years before going to school and trying to change occupations. And that was always like, I would rather have somebody who came in that was completely green, had no prior experience, but was just open, honest, and ready to learn. And they asked me questions. Like, I don't care. You ask me a question. That doesn't take much time out of my day. And
Yep.
like, I'd much rather you come to me with a question if you don't know what to do, rather than just be like, I'm scared to ask a question. I'm just going to do it
Hmm.
anyways. And then that just leading to some major issue later on, especially, when you got like a prep project or something like that, something that's supposed to be kind of foundational for the rest
Hmm.
of the day, that if that gets messed up, they'll lead to a snowball effect of many series of other events that is just going to be quite a headache. I'd just much rather, like, if you feel unconfident, just come up and talk to me. And I just much rather have that. The honesty is always very key. That's
If you
something
don't, yeah.
I valued a lot with
Yeah,
people I was
and if you
training.
don't have that, like, there's not really much to build on. But the thing that what you can, and this is for your group and for you as well, is um, a lot of the people when you're switching jobs, a lot of people come with baggage, especially people like
Yeah.
me who've been around a while. Is if you're not the kind of person, if you, especially if you're a homebrew, I saw this at like multiple places where like, oh, I've been doing this for a while, and you look at their procedure and you're like, this is all wrong. And so when people who've been doing it for a while come in, I'm actually more skeptical of those people than I am someone who's like green. Because green people like, I don't know, train me. I'm like, cool, I can work with this.
You
But old
can,
people,
yeah,
I got this.
you can build them up exactly to the kind of procedures and just the type of person. It's someone who flows well with the current working environment, essentially.
Mhm.
That makes total sense. Yeah. And that's something I too, from being in that perspective, something I've come like this apprenticeship right now. I, you know, I've been I've been a computer nerd like for more than I've not been. Right, I've had a computer since I was a child, and it's always been something I've been very fascinated with. I've been taking them apart, the
Good.
inside software side of things, everything like that. But just because I know more things about IT than the average person, I'm not going to come in there with a big ego. I'm going to take it from my perspective. Like, even if I'm going to throw my foundation, what I know, this wayside, not entirely, of course, right?
Yeah.
But I come in being like, hey, just treat me like I'm green, like I'm fresh. Even if I do have some experience, like, I'll let you know if, like, okay, this is something I'm fairly confident with. And even when I'm like 98% sure about something, I still like, I'm just gonna double check, make sure. Even though most of the times when I ask a question, it'll be like, "Hey, is this the right thing to do?" They'll be like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, good." But I want to make sure I get that confirmation until the point where I feel and they feel like, you know, I'm good to be more autonomous, essentially.
And a lot of that, and this is my strategy, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you want to look like you're absolutely, hot, you're the top notch, top dog, documentation is the king of everything.
Yeah.
If Because what I do, if I'm doing a firewall push or I'm doing whatever change, architectural change, I put in, here's my sources. Here's the Cisco white papers I did. Here's the, other professionals that agree with my opinion. It's like, it's not, it's like writing any sort of, professional document. You put your sources in there, like you're writing a paper that you guys have all done. It's like, hey, I think you should do this. Why? Because I feel it. Like, okay, I don't care about your feelings. Like, well, here's Cisco's official statement of, yes, you can jump from ICE 2.6 to 3.1 using this procedure. Like, okay, you don't have to trust me. In fact, you shouldn't. But when Cisco or Palo Alto, when they say it's cool, all right, that's a done deal. It's also much more defendable because we had an issue recently where I was upgrading an ICE instance and it failed, and the boss was kind of concerned. I'm like, well, Cisco, here's their white paper saying that that's good to go, but then when I talked to TAC, their support, It's like, yeah, we actually kind of have issues with that. I was like, oh, you done me dirty. But my documentation is documentation will save you. Documentation will make you look good because people, you do like a change request, they ask like, okay, what are you doing? Here's step one, step two, boom, boom, boom. You got everything in there. And when people look at it, they're like, okay, this guy's pro. Because I've seen people like, I'm making a change. They're like, okay, there's so many empty boxes here, dude. You didn't make any effort. Come on. How am I supposed to trust you? And then it goes sideways. And this is really, it's kind of a CYA function more than anything, but it also is a professional thing. So if something happens that's unexpected and they look at your documentation, I said, Sam, you filled out one sentence says, I'm going to change the firewalls. And things went sideways. So you care to explain this basically empty change request? You're like, uh-oh, I'm getting fired.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing. Documentation always looks good, and it's just like you said. If you're not sure, which is totally fine, like go do something to be sure, and you'll look good. And your batting average will be much higher. My average is like 95% success. So that's how I win. It's like, how do you do it so often? I'm like, because I research it. It's not, but you test it out. I don't just push to prod. You put it in a lab. Oh, crap, it blew up the lab. Should we do it in production? No, it blew up in the lab. It'll blow up in here. Don't do it. So I'll go off on that rant, but I think that answers your question.
I mean, it seems like it's common sense, but you'd be surprised.
You would think, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's not any different. And that was the surprising part. I mean, you've been at your previous gig, it's going to be just as much as like all this. And overwhelmingly, there is a stigma, and that's why I'm on the board. I'm a big, I'm a big proponent of get students hired. Quite frankly, fire the old guard if I can get rid of them, because you guys come in with standards and stuff doing right, and you understand that, like, oh, they're new. It's like, yeah, they're trainable, and they already come pre-baked with good, good certifications, good knowledge, and they don't have, and it's really for me about those bad habits that people have been in the business a while. It's like, I've always treated people like garbage. That's how I do. Like, get out.
Yeah, I think that's just that's a death sentence right there in a field like this that's so young and also evolving so fast, is to be stuck and rooted in what you know, what you like. Don't get me wrong, it's good to stick to procedures and, like you said, to have that standardization and whatnot. But if you're not sitting there like, okay, this is the way I've always done it, this is the way I'm going to continue doing it, it's just not going to work. I mean, that's like a black hat's like dream right there. So this is like an adversary. Like, oh man, they don't change anything. Like that's how vulnerabilities appear. Like you say, like an old operating system like Windows XP. There's a reason why you don't want to run Windows XP anymore. It's not just like, yeah, surprisingly 1% of people still run it. It still has a 1% OS market share, but and that's a lot of people just like, oh, it's always worked for me, I want to keep the same. But there's a reason why you shouldn't do that, because like that technology hasn't been updated, that software hasn't been updated in a long time. It's going to be vulnerable to security issues because adversaries have had a long time at this point now to figure out all the holes and flaws with the software. And if you're
And this is something that your perspective and probably some of the others are going to have as a college student, which is not a bad thing, but there's a meta-analysis that needs to happen. So you look at this company's rolling XP, like they're idiots. What's wrong? Why? And then you start digging in. You're like, well, it's because I've seen this OT side at like Northwest Natural for gas or at a hospital. Well, these applications they're using are only supported on XP.
Yeah,
so there's a
like the
reason
military.
for it. It sucks. And usually you'll find in like the security people, they're like, we're aware and we're not happy about it.
Yeah.
And so, okay, and this is where the engineering hat comes on. Like, all right, we have essentially a tainted, poisonous box that is rife for the picking. So we are going to layer this thing. We can't touch the thing, but we can put layers of security over the top of it to make it as difficult and isolate it. And so that's where the thing is, generally speaking, when you see oh, why were they running old code? Why were they doing vulnerability stuff? Why is this happening? It's like, it tends to be overwhelmingly, from my experience, because their systems are so exotic that nobody knows how they work. When you do vanilla, people like it's boring. Like I've had some really good talks, like IBM that I've watched is like 80% vanilla, 20% chocolate at the most. Because vanilla, anybody can walk in, is like, oh, it goes from the switch to the router to the firewall. Okay, cool. Oh, that's actually, it's like going to the switch and then it bounces around 3 other routers and does this kind of cutesy circular, like, what the hell? All these, the main ones are patched, but these other weird ones that they bounce through are wildly insecure. Like, who designed this? Like, were they high and drunk at the same time? And that's where you see a lot of the vulnerabilities. It's simply because there's no documentation and everything's so exotic that nobody knows how it works.
Yeah, it just starts building up like a Jenga tower that's had some of those blocks pushed out. It gets like it's holding up, but at some point it's gonna hit critical mass.
Your solution, and we have tools like that, a SOAR product, which, security, orchestration, automation, response. And automation and orchestration is huge. I'm a big fan of it. It's like if you have 1,000 routers that you have to patch manually, when I've seen it recently, not too long ago, it was like, or crazy idea, you attach it to Cisco DNA Center. We say, hey, these 1,000 routers, push patch, go to bed, you're done.
Yes.
That's how you keep current, is that you have automation and tools of scale.
Yep.
That will keep you in the green more often than not.
Yeah, that's how things like DHCP came about, right? It's just like you don't want to sit there and assign an IP address to every single device you have on the network. Sometimes it's just nice when you can have a procedure or protocol, got to take care
If
of
only
that.
there was some system where we could just plug it in and it figures it out. Well, what is that system? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had multiple people because I've developed a OVOC. It's One Voice Operations Center. So I built all the SBCs for voice networks and an orchestrator for that. And they're like, how do we keep this updated? I'm like, go to my orchestrator, load the new code, say go to all the SBCs, push, go to sleep. You're done. Like, well, we can't do it manually. I'm like, if you want to, it will take you hours. If you want to shoot yourself in the foot, go for it. But I ain't signing up for that. Home, I want to go take a drink and take a nap. And so, and it just becomes, it's the death by 1,000 cuts is what any sort of, whether it's security, network systems, you have 1,000 servers you got to patch and you're doing them all manually, you're out of your mind. You use SCCM to push stuff out. Oh, now we're talking Turkey or Intune or something like that. Like, that's why stuff gets so backed up. It's just because it's so, everyone does things manually and they just can't keep up because you're human and you can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like, it's like it's not quite the same, but it's like the old saying, give a man fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a life. It's this kind of same thing with technology too. You can do everything manually, and sure, that can work, right? But
it doesn't. No, I'll take a stand there. It doesn't. But yeah, and now take that same idea and push it to scale. So feed a man a fish a day, he'll eat for a day, and you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. It's like, okay, now you have 1,000 men. Or you're going to feed 1,000 people a fish every day. That's a hell of a lot of, the term is administrative overhead. And that's where people get bogged down. And that's why I do so well. I'm like, yeah, homie, I'm doing the automated version. If you want to go manual, a project happened last year. 592 routers needed to be updated. They did it manually. It took them months. I was like, hey, or crazy thought, SolarWinds, orchestrate it, push the code, automate the pull. Huh? They're like, we're not comfortable with that. I'm like, well, you're comfortable with paying out the nose because that's what you're about to do. So
see, that'd just be absolutely ridiculous. Like, say for like, you're upgrading a series of machines. You got like to upgrade like 500 new systems. They're 5 years out of date. They need an upgrade, whatever. All right. Imagine having to pre-configure like each one of those systems.
People do
individually.
that
And that's
generally is the
insane to
default
me
route.
when you can just like you create a server, you have images for those systems you want on there. Instead,
Yep. All
you
those
create the
repositories or
image.
repos. Yep.
Yeah, you create the image one time and then you just upload that to all the new systems.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Automation,
say
it's so crazy, folks. Maybe we should give it a old college try. Oh, manual is the way. I'm sure my switch will be manually updated and that's secure. I'm like, well.
and
The
honestly
other thing is
speaking,
automation. Generally, you build your automation. This is kind of engineering 101. When you build your automations and you test them out, like this is true with aviation, it's true with medicine, it's true with any job. If you have a human interacting with something multiple times, the chances of them making a mistake goes up exponentially. Whereas the
yeah,
robot will do it right every time.
that's another about I was just about to make that point too. It's like when you're doing everything manual like that, bound to make more mistakes. At some point, like we're human beings, no matter how close we get to perfection, we're not going to be there. Like we're just bound to make mistakes at some point, whether you just mistype one number or you miss something much more big, more substantial. It doesn't matter. Like that's a problem that comes into say like coding that happens all the time where like it's
Yep.
not that your code was wrong, it's just you missed a semicolon right here or you tapped one tab too far on this one line of code, and that threw everything out the window. And that's all it takes. It's just one little thing to. So that's where that automation really comes in, kind of letting the machines do their work. You know,
Mm-hmm. Now
let the machine do what
there
they
is an
do
inherent
best. And
risk too. Now, this is the part that why people are gun shy is if you have someone who's a bad automator or orchestrator and you push out crap code to 500 machines, oh boy, it's going to be a fun night for you as you roll back your absolute destruction. So that's where people get nervous, and I understand that. And that's why if you, the best way I describe it is if you want to go the engineering path, the best route is to think yourself as a sniper, and that's the right way. Is you spend 90% of the time, okay, tweak the code, okay, that's a little bit off. We're about to push this out to 1,000 devices. Checking the wind, okay, pull, and then it shoots out, and then you hit your target, and everyone goes home happy. Now, if you miss or you screw up and then you shoot, I don't know, the life support system, you're like, oops, yep, because that. Let's just say this is not a hypothetical situation that you just say someone put a number wrong. Hypothetically, not hypothetically, someone may have accidentally killed the port channels between two data centers and knocked out the entire data center for it was about 4 or 5 hours because they didn't
yeah,
check to see if they were putting it in port channel 1 or port channel 2. It's like,
yeah,
well, that's important. Did you check that? We kind of did. And like, ooh, kind of is gonna hurt. They
yep,
may or may not have been fired for that. It's like,
yeah.
but really, that the firing wasn't because of the mistake; it was because of the reaction afterwards. So if you're gonna push hot, like you have changes, and this is a big part of engineering too, and even ops is like, hey, we're gonna do a big change. It's a code upgrade. It's risky. It's going to be high risk, but we're going to be on standby, through the night to make sure that people come in the morning with a working system. So that's goes into the other work-life balances. You'll be willing to be flexible because if you are the crazy person who wants to push code during the day and major changes, good luck. You're gonna have, if you do it in the office and because I've done this. It was like my first network engineer job. It's like, oh, I can update this router over lunchtime. They'll be super happy when they come back. Nope, code didn't stick, and the entire office had nothing to do except stand over my head and my shoulders, be like, is it done yet? And oh boy, that was not a fun day.
Yep.
So you're going to do stuff at night, you're like, all right, this is high risk. I'm not going to do it when, accounting is in here. Use your brain of like, hey, yeah, should we push this during the day or should we push it on for usually try to avoid like Friday nights, but you do stuff that's going to make sense and then flex your schedule around that.
That makes complete sense. All right, let's blow through these
All
last
right.
few questions here. Let's see what we got. Okay, so what might a new employee expect to earn in this field at entry level?
Oh, this is a fun one. So this is where you guys are gonna either love me or hate me. I am a hyper aggressive person. So I have never gotten a job offer that I have not immediately countered and countered hard with like a 10 to 20% differential. They'll almost always cave to some extent, but money wise, you all, and if I find anybody in here, if you're watching this video, you person, whoever's watching, if you take a job less than 50K, I will find you and I will hunt you down. The real amount you should be shooting for at entry level is probably somewhere between 50 to 80K, and then with a decent amount of benefits. As a security person with a college degree and certifications, the less tools that you have, if you don't have those certifications, you're going to be scraping closer to that 50, 60. Yeah. If you do have them, then you're closer to that 70 to 80 mark in
you have
general.
more tools of negotiation.
It's all about like because people focus on the money stuff, and I do. I've chewed out recruiters, I've chewed out C-suite people. I love it. It's fun. I'm kind of an a-hole in that way, but I do it because you guys are in a position of not so much power. You don't have as much leverage. So someone tried to pull a fast one and give me a job that had no vacation time as a senior network engineer. I was like, go pound sand, dude.
Yeah.
But for you guys who are starting out, the more that you have in your arsenal to leverage, you have cool projects that you can show off. You have certifications. You have your college degree. You have experience. Everything that you can shock up is going to give you ammunition to throw back. And you have to look at it is the pay stuff it's a battle with HR, not with the company per se, and certainly not with your hiring manager or your potential new team. So don't think of like, oh, I'm going to ask for more money, my team will hate me. It's like, no, they have absolutely nothing to do with it. So negotiate in a way that you think is reasonable and in a way that's going to get you what you've deserved. I mean, I was military, so the GI Bill paid for my schooling, so I came out with no debt. But if if you didn't and you're taking loans out, those loans come due immediately after you graduate. I'm like, make sure you're getting money so you're not like house poor or, I got my certifications and my degree, but I'm living out of van. Like, well, that sucks, dude. Don't do that. And if anyone has problems or issues, you can always reach out to me. And I love coming in with an iron fist on places. I'll wreck their stuff. So the DEF CON thing makes me able to just do really crappy things to bad people. But yeah, so the 50 to 80K in the Portland area is a pretty wide swath depending on what's good entry level roles that are less, they pay less, but the culture or the lifestyle work-life balance is like nonprofits and stuff like that. They tend to be harder up for people. Their pay tends to be less, but their work life and their vacation tends to be much better. So I've worked in the gas industry and private insurance, which is flush with cash, but let's say a little evil if I'm being totally honest. But they tend to have more pay. But their work-life balance tends to be worse. So, pick your poison.
Pick and choose. Yep. Makes sense.
And since we're talking about that, I'm a big proponent of money, after a certain point, money doesn't really matter as much. I know that's weird to say for college students that are looking at it because I was in your shoes, but the difference, Northwest Natural, my first offer, they offered me 90. I wanted six figures. They gave me 92, but I said, hey, you can flex on PTO because I'm a big fan about off time. So I went from 14 days of vacation to 21, which is usually reserved for people in 5 years. So, and I was like, yeah, extra week of vacation. That sounds good to me. Like, money is not the only thing when you're at this level, especially if you have like good technical ability. There's a thing called golden handcuffs. Maybe you've heard of them. It's like sometimes benefits are really good. And if you have a family, you have other things you're taking care of. Like the money isn't always the thing, but look at the package that's developed. There's pay, there's vacation, there's healthcare, there's dental, all
even
that.
Something like travel too is also a big
training. Hey, we have a training budget that's 10K that you can go blow and go do a SANS course that you would otherwise not be able to do or pay out of pocket. Do the math, do your research, see what's fair, and sometimes just getting your leg in the door. Because I thought I was going to take a hard L going from network engineering to security. I took a tiny bump, but then then DEF CON happened, and I was like, that was a wild card, so I don't want to count that as anything other than a lucky shot in the dark. But just pick your poison. Get your foot in the door. Get offers. There's nothing wrong. I had a buddy that just felt bad because he accepted an offer that you only got 40K bonus. I'm like, yeah, no, you didn't lose that negotiation, homie. You won. As far as like you went against a major corporation and you got extra 40K.
Yeah,
Well
that's
done.
good. That's very
So
good.
So you guys probably won't be at that level for a little while, but
Of
getting your
course,
leg in the door, getting out, get out. Don't shoot for help desk. Shoot for those analyst positions. There's tons of availability. There's remote stuff. I get upset when people go through this program and go for help desk and you're making sub 50K. Like, nah, you are hacking at the level that it should be at least a SOC analyst or a security person. Go that route. Get what you've earned. Y'all have done this. You've got your certifications and your degrees. You should be breaking easily 60 to 70K should be a solid mid-range to hit.
Yeah, you just gotta ignore the, what is it called? I think it's imposter syndrome. Yeah, that's what
Oh,
it's
I had
called.
it huge. So
Everybody,
here's
yeah.
my story for anyone who's interested. My first offer was for Bend with Les Schwab as a network. I think they had an admin, administrator, maybe it was an engineer. I can't remember. 64K over in Bend, and I would have had to move over there. I'm like, hem ha. And then an offer came up for Cambia, and they were 96K, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll take that, please. And then I went in, and day one, oh boy, imposter syndrome was real. I was like, oh, they're gonna find out I'm a fraud. I don't know. I don't know what's a computer. Ah, jeez. And it's like it goes away. It takes like a week or two. Every place on board just slowly. They understand you're green. Like even if you've been in around the business for a while, like people with 20 years, there's still an onboarding process to here's how our business works, here's our current stuff, blah 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 blah. It goes away after time. And honestly, it helped a lot because the onboarding process itself, you get to like here's our system, and then you look at it and it's like a dumpster fire. Like this is your best people working on this. Oh yeah, that's our best. I'm like okay, imposter syndrome is immediately gone. Holy crap. You'll see that a lot.
Replaced by overwhelming confidence. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. As a follow-up, you kind of already answered this question to some extent, but like, what are the job opportunities, say like here in Portland? Like how does the market look for open positions, like the demand for new employees, and like what is the room for like advancement or growth in the field as well?
Oh, this is where things get weird. And this is like a super it depends. Every company is like wildly different. And this is the part that kind of sucks. I can tell you from my experience, I've been at a couple of companies in which they're like, yeah, no, the biggest one I call them out on is like, oh yeah, we have tons of growth opportunity and training and promotions. My current gig, and I'll put them on blast because I don't care. Peace Health, I'm a security analyst level 1 in the engineering department. They don't want to use the term security engineer because you'll see a lot of this kind of stuff is like, we don't want to call you something because it costs more money when we say engineer. People get really like, they get sensitive over that kind of stuff. And I like to call them out because it makes them uncomfortable and it's fun. It's like, oh, am I engineering? Am I building something? Oh, you're like, blah, 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 blah. So you'll see that kind of weird stuff. But the opportunities, and that's why it's important to like look at the company one. I've heard places do like Glassdoor and stuff, but realistically, when they send an offer with benefits packages, and just to see what you can publicly, I'm a big fan of if I get approached by a recruiter, I'll be like, they're like, here's the job offer, here's the all the requirements that they're looking for. I'm like, that's so weird. You forgot to send the benefits package and the compensation because I'm not doing this as a charity, homie. Oh, like, oh, this is our laundry list. Hey, Sam, this is what I want from you. You're like, okay, well, this is like a two-way street.
Yeah,
I do things for you, and you give me money. And
yeah,
usually, when people hide the amount that it is or the compensation, the more they're trying to hide it, the more they lowball. And what you'll see is this other weird thing is like the bigger the laundry list, the smaller the compensation or the crappier the packages.
yeah.
It's a weird paradox that seems to happen. I don't know, just kind of noticed it.
And I think a lot of people too are kind of scared to do something like that, to kind of stand up a little bit to the employer, be like, okay, I really need a job, right?
Because if you're in a
I don't,
pinch, yeah, I mean
I,
your bills are coming due, whether it's your for school, your tuition payments, or for your rent or your mortgage. It's like I get it, and
I,
that's why I don't
and,
put up with that
yeah,
crap. But other
and
people
like,
are not in a strong position,
yeah,
so
and I think a lot of people are scared to like be able to be like, hey, there's no benefits or anything like that when they're trying to get a job and negotiating with an employer. But in reality, I think, I mean, obviously, if you're being, an asshole or just demanding, like it's probably not going to work out very well in your favor. But I think having some sort of, you know, hey, value in yourself actually
correct.
comes out as a positive thing to an employer. And I'm like, hey, I want some, I need that PTO as well. Like this isn't, I'm not just going to be, a drone or works on me or whatever.
Because
However,
you'll burn out, and I've burned
yeah,
out. I've seen other people burn out. It's just like if you think you can run these people into the ground for crap pay, they're like, oh, I don't always because I like to ask this and like, what's your turnover rate looking like? And they're like, ugh. I'm like, oh yeah, this is
yeah,
a slave company. The reason that your turn at a previous company that was a 110% turnover in a year, and they're like, hmm. This must be the market. And like, or you have slave conditions here. You thought about that? Maybe
yeah.
people are running for the hills. They think maybe there's a cultural problem or a pay
And
problem.
and the problem too with high turnover like that too is that um, you end up having to pay like for the company. And speaking of the company's perspective, where their objective is essentially to make as much profit as possible, right?
Hmm.
You're actually That's actually a loss in profits right there too, because you will gradually have to pay your employees higher than you would if you had kept employees over a long period of time. This is, you see a lot of studies here. They go,
Hmm.
people who tend to hop from job to job end up having a much higher pay than those who stick with the same job
Yeah, it's
for
called a disloyalty
long.
bonus, and I'm very
Yeah,
aware of it. But so you can do the route because a lot of people will bounce, and I honestly don't have as much respect for people who do that. I'm like, dude, stay and fight. Like, if it's so poisonous that you have to like go to knuckles every time, and yeah,
yeah,
bounce. But yeah, there's the disloyalty bonus, and the other aspect is, um, just having a little bit of pushback. Standing up for yourself to some degree. I know it feels scary at times, but I mean, at the end of the day, like you're a human being. Last I checked, and so is the other people. You have families. You'd like to see your family. You'd like to live your life and not just be a work slave, whether it's for a mom and pop or a corporation. And if I've seen places that simply don't get that, it's like, because I'm having my paramedic hat on, like, dude, if you work someone to the bone, the quality of their work goes down like a whole bunch. And the recruiting process is not free. It costs money to, well, in the meantime, you're down one person, your team's running of three in which you need 10. It's like, oh, well, this is not going
yeah,
to work well. And they're spending all this money on recruiting and marketing. It's like, or you could have just given the dude the 10K he asked for. You think you do that, and then
yeah,
boom, you're done. They're producing. You don't have to onboard a new person because when they're
exactly.
onboarded for the first 6 months, you're mostly useless. Honestly, I'll
Yeah,
I'll be nice and say 2 months, but it's probably closer to six before you're really like punching at what you're getting paid for.
yeah, and that could even be worse, depending on the complexity of the job position.
Yeah,
It doesn't, yeah, it does, even with a substantial amount of foundational knowledge and whatnot, it still is a process nonetheless to get somebody new in that position and have them be onboarded and ready and autonomous like the previous person was. And that's a cost sink right there, and visible one that you can't really, I mean, you can't track it, right? But it's not one that like appears as obvious as on paper as some other expenses would be.
it's obvious to the accounting department, but if they don't relay that over to like, oh, I just lost another network guy, I just lost another security guy, I'm like, okay, that's not a free thing. That work still needs to be done. So instead of having five security people, you're now down to four. And if they were already running at, in sixth gear at 100%, there ain't any more gears to go up, homie.
Yep,
You're going to burn them out. And then what usually happens, because that's what I did,
they're gonna
is your
leave.
top talent will leave first because top talent, just like me, I've had people threaten me at various jobs. I'm like, cool, if you fire me at 8 o'clock, I'll be working at your competitor by noon. So
Yeah.
your choice. But again, I'm a hyper aggressive person, but it's that mentality of like, people try to squeeze it. The companies are trying to get what they can. It's an adversary relationship, and so if you
Yes.
understand it, it doesn't have to be openly hostile, but you just understand the business is trying to get as much value out of you with paying you the least, and ideally you're on the opposite side. Like, I want to get the most money from you and give you the least amount of work. It sounds negative in that way, but you ideally you both meet in the middle and say, okay, how about we say I do good work for you and you give me good money. Does that sound fair? As long as we're keeping it cool,
Yeah.
we're cool.
And that's that's it's going to be like that because that's just the nature of it. What the employee wants is an inverse relationship to what the company wants. The company wants to pay
Correct.
you as little as possible and get the most amount of work done from you. And you
Yep.
want to get the highest pay for the least amount of work. So
Mhm.
that's a good point. You have to meet that middle ground, negotiate for that. And that's where you can find, and it doesn't have to, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be this toxic, this,
It doesn't have to be
bad
vitriolic.
relationship.
Yeah,
It could
because
be
you'll see this
professional.
too. If you guys are going down just the cybersecurity route, think about what is our job. Our job, because I've had a couple of like leaders in cybersecurity be like, we don't want to be the office of no. I'm like, we're the digital cops. We are the office of no.
Yeah.
Because like, hey, I was thinking maybe we like put BitTorrent on our network. Like, no,
No.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side, we have, because I've always thought of this as like we have network and we have security. Network is the department of yes, we'll connect everything, and we are security, we are the office of no. And so I've seen poisonous relationships between the two departments, and I've seen symbiotic relationships that are great. It's like, hey, we want to open this up. Hey, security guys, how can we do this safely? And like, cool, it's early on. The project isn't launching tomorrow. Let's lock down these ports. Let's get the attack surface as tight as we can and have safeguards in there. And then for some reason, when we work together well and plan things out, they tend to work. What a surprise.
Yeah, it's similar to like you trying to set like permission levels for, your IT technicians, for instance, right? System admin's going to set certain privileges, sometimes, especially when it's a new, I don't know, whatever, new procedure, so on and so forth. They kind of got to do testing too, like see, like they might give you less permissions that the technicians actually need, and then kind of find a way out. Like, oh, if the technician hits a wall, like I don't have permission to do this.
Yeah.
System admin can then provide that permission. Like, okay, this is a situation where you need this, instead of giving them more permissions. I think there's a rule. I forgot. I think there's a phrasing for that, but giving
Yeah, it's like just in time. There's like you granting temporary roles. I forgot the term on Azure, but yeah. And then that's where you're going into like an engineering discussion is like, does every technician need this or does some of them need it
yeah.
some of the time? And,
Yeah,
and you kind of
is this a
address,
group permission or is this an individual permission, for instance?
does the
That make,
CEO and the CIO need admin access to everything in the company? Well, yes, they do. Like, no, they do not. I will die on that hill, and I have many times. I was like,
because
they're
yeah,
like
that
threatening
just
fire. I'm like, no way, dude. No way. You're
that,
a whale with access to everything. Hell
yeah,
no.
yeah, that's just a huge, because all it takes is like one misclick on an email, or somebody, some simple mistake, and somebody gets access to that account, because that's like, that is the golden ticket right there in terms of
Nope.
hacking right there. If you get somebody's information, you can you can penetrate, or you can do reconnaissance attacks or whatever. The best gateway in is if you have somebody's credentials in, and you happen to get somebody's credentials and they have all these permissions, especially ones they don't need. I'm like, oh, you're going to see havoc get wrecked in no time at all.
Yeah, the older the company, the tends to be the older the guard. That they'll be like, you'll see stuff like that. Older companies, like all the C-suite have admin access, and you're like, why? And I'll go to like security people or other, and like, why do they have all this? And like, because they want it. And like, tell them no.
Yeah,
Lock
it's
that stuff down. I'll do it myself, and you can fire me afterwards. And this is again part of my hyper aggression is like, if someone fires me because I did the right thing, because after a while, someone, let's say like you, is going to get hired after I get canned, and then you'll look at mine and be like, Travis made sure all the C-suite people didn't have admin access. yeah, that sounds about right. Well, he was fired for it. Like, okay, well, at least I respect him because he made the right decision.
Yeah.
Because that does happen a lot. Like, or if you just move on, you leave a job. I'm a big fan of like, I'm a big fan of legacies, and that's why I do these interviews. Is like, at some point, I'm probably going to work with a couple of you folks, and it's like, oh, Travis said I can just kind of cut corners. And like, oh shit, I trained him to do that. Oh, damn it, this is biting me in the ass. Or you'll see some of my work is like, Travis said he was good, but he just did any on these firewalls. Like, ooh, ugh, he's not
Yeah.
here anymore. Thank God he isn't. Sucks.
Yep. Too, and you think about it too. Like if a company is like, okay, well, even if this is the right decision, and I mean that will speak a lot about what kind of operation you're working for there too. Like, okay, well, if this is what something I get fired over, there's the outlook for this organization is probably not great. If this
And
is
by
the
the way,
kind of
the community will absolutely see that because in this, I recommend that you guys join in local hacker communities. You just put in there, hey, I got fired for not letting the CEO have admin access to everything. They'll be like, okay, we're hiring because you know there was a recent thing. It was I think it was like not SkyTel, Sky something like Sky Videos or something. They go to DEF CON frequently, and they step back. They wanted to enforce masks, and DEF CON said they could not enforce masks. That was their choice, and so they said we officially stepped down from DEF CON 31 because we will not do this. They took a line in the sand. You want respect from a community? That's the way to get it. Is like, no, this is the hill I die on, and if it's a good one to die on, people will hire you in a hot minute. It'll be like,
yep.
dude took the ultimate L for the right reasons. That's the kind of character that we want at our company, is someone that is willing to take the ultimate stand against it.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to much earlier in this interview too, just being social, being making connections too. It, you don't have to be friends with every person you meet in the industry
Mhm.
and have them in your contact or phone number, but it's good to be part of the community and be around because the more people you know, the more opportunities you're going to have, and it's it,
And there's strength in
it
numbers too.
yeah,
So if you're like, it's as a security department, you bond together, and be like, hey, I'm taking a harsh stance against another team. I need you to back my play because this is the right call. It's like, yeah, and whether it's at a company or you get fired and you're back into the community as a, unemployed for a while, the community will rally. They'll be like, yeah, we agree with you. And sometimes they'll be like, because of the stuff I did with an employer, I won't put it on camera necessarily, but I've had people that talk to me at RainSec, which is a local hacker group. I highly recommend you guys look into. They said, yeah, we saw your post in Signal, and someone was looking at that job, and I told them, wave off because they're going to try to do you dirty. And I was like, good, that's why I did it. And we all respect each other for watching each other's back. We don't have unions in IT, but we do have as groups that back each other up. And hey, there's this company that's doing something sketchy. There's a group that's doing active attacks. Uh, we win by numbers. That's the only way we win.
I actually have a question with that too.
Sure.
What would be a good place to find communities like this? Would like say like Reddit, LinkedIn? What would where would you go, for instance?
My entry. So, I will say, RainSec, RANSEC, is a local group that meets up every month in Portland. There's one that's called 2600 as well. But as far as sources, you just go fishing on the internet. Reddit is decent. You look at various like large communities, Reddit, Facebook. It can be a little weird. LinkedIn sometimes. Meetup is a pretty decent one that I've seen. Actually, that's probably one of the better resources for local events and I recommend in person, honestly, if you can.
Yeah.
You go there, like we do RainSec. It's every Tuesday, last Tuesday at the end of the month, and we go there and talk about security, have beers and pizza. And Daniel Huckman is the leader of it. He set it up years ago, and he buys the drink. He buys like pitchers of beer. Obviously if you're 21 and up, but there's sodas you can have at Lucky Labrador, and pizza. And he's just like, people who are in the community, we pitch in when we can because there's people who are students that go there too. Obviously, you don't have as much money or whatnot, but you go there and you can learn about people. You network there. Mostly we go there and drink and bitch about our problems. Ah, this idiot just clicked on this link again. Phyllis in accounting, you can bond over. And people share weird projects. I have my LED lights that I've done. Other people have. I have a buddy, Brian Vance. He does a project for getting bikes back. So doing like geo-tracking on bikes and looking through scraping of Craigslist for stolen bikes and serials. So you see all sorts of weird, cool stuff, and you get inspired by that.
That's awesome. That's
So
crazy.
in person, highly recommend in person.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that'll help you quite a bit.
And now, you've already given plenty of pieces of advice actually throughout this interview, but
Sure.
what key piece of advice would you give to somebody like me trying to look into getting this field?
Yeah, this is my favorite one. So I also said it in the other interview with Katrina, but I'll reiterate it because it's so important. And I actually heard something more interesting on the topic is job recs and the job, applications. They are a wish list at best. So if you look at the thing, you're like, I can only do 25% of what they're asking for, apply anyways.
Yeah.
Because 25% of that list is a good candidate. 50% of that list is a fantastic candidate. Someone who has 100% of a job rec, you need to move on. You're too good for that job, to be frank. You will not have anything to grow into. So that is my recommendations. Pull the trigger, put your application in, put in your resume. Also, look at your resume and get it reviewed by other people. And be like, okay, go to the security thing. There's actually a chat on our hacker group about doing a resume review where people come in and just look at what you've got. Your resume is the first thing you see, and you have an ATS system, which sucks. So if you can get through a recruiter, that's always better. Go. Also, LinkedIn is a horrible cesspool of humanity, but it's the best way to get a job more often than not. It sucks. And be nice to recruiters. I did that a lot when I was starting. Like, reach out to recruiters, say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Here's my thing. Can you look out? They get paid for every time they place one of you folks. So make them earn their pay. It's like, selling a house. They don't make any money until they sell the house. And, make your way into that. Get those people working for you so you're not the one. Because I have recruiters that call me every day. This isn't like humble brag or any of that crap. It's just I've made good inroads with recruiters, and they can be venomous too. So you got to put them in your place sometimes. If you feel the need to, I have. It's like, hey, don't send me into this crap that's I want someone who does voice and security and networking and systems, and I want to pay them $70K. I'm like, good for you. Get out. And I'll
Good luck.
if a recruiter goes that, I'll be nice with them at first. I'll be like, how long has that job been open for? I bet it's been a few months. They're like, yeah, nobody's really biting. I'm like, yeah, I know. Nobody will bite on that. Shame on them for even asking.
I mean, that makes sense too. I mean, I can attest to that too. Like, for instance, this apprenticeship I'm doing at the school, I almost didn't apply for it just because I looked at it. I'm like,
I don't know if I can do
I'm not
that.
qualified.
Imposter syndrome, man.
I saw like they wanted their A+. I haven't done my A+. I'm not getting this till this summer. But like Wayne was like, do it, apply. Katrina was
Dwayne's
like,
good
do
dude.
it, apply.
Dwayne's good dude.
And sure enough, here I am, and I'm really happy I did take that opportunity because now I'm going to be coming out of school with some very valuable work experience. Something that's
and you got references too, and I'm a big fan. Another thing is portfolio pieces are work experience. I am a big fan of the only difference between a hobbyist and a professional is the professional gets money. I had one of my offers I had when I was in Portland when I was graduating. I used my final project for graduating, which my project was to make a enterprise network at the house. Now, secretly, I already had been doing that, so I just basically mapped out what I had. But one of the first kids, it was at Portland Internet Works. They're actually pretty good people too. They had for me a systems engineering position, and they're like, okay, the first question they asked is like, draw out your home network. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. And so I was like, here's my NAS, here's my multiple access points, here's my virtualized firewall, here's my networks across, and they just like, holy crap, we've never seen a network that complex. And they said the moment I did that, the interview was essentially over, and they were just doing the motions to get me to the part where they
Yep.
can give an offer. If you
Yep.
can do it, most places are pretty good about meritorious. Like if you can show with documentation, and the things that you've done, your portfolio, which includes documentation, then that's experience. Like,
Yep.
hey, can you run a firewall? Well, I already am. Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's done.
And they're probably, they look at too, like, this is what this guy does when he's not getting paid, or with
Yeah.
he or they or whoever. When they're not getting paid. Like, this is,
Imagine how good he'll be when we give
yeah,
him money and pay him.
yeah,
Holy crap, that horse
yeah,
is chomping at the bit. We just need to like open the stall door and have him shoot out. So go that route. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the best way to get in. And just know imposter syndrome is always going to be a thing. Kick that crap to the curb. Put your name in the hat. The worst thing they can say is no. Like, hey
yeah.
man, I've had people tell me to get stuff. I'm like, yeah. It rarely happens. It'll just usually be like, thank you for applying, but we have chosen going with a different candidate. I think I had applied to probably 30 jobs, maybe 40 when I got 3 of them. So your batting average is going to be probably crap across the board, but you only need 1 job. So, who cares
Keep
about
going.
RBAs? Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. It's just like eventually it's always the hardest too when you're going into it. Like
Yep.
when you have no experience, because that, like you said earlier, experience is key. Like it's more valuable than anything else. Pretty
And
much
that's
in
the
any.
valuable part about the program that you guys are in and I was in. It's like what you have is it's an AAS because I had one in paramedic. It's an Associates of Applied Science. Y'all have done that. You've gone into probably the NDG. You've built firewalls. You've set up groups. You've played with switches. You've configured routers. It's like that's experience. You know what the difference of doing that in the lab and out here is? Zero.
Yeah,
It's the same thing.
that was my surprise too. So when I started apprenticeship, I'm like, wow, like these
I actually know some
simulations,
stuff. I can do
these
things.
these simulations that we're doing in these applications, and these they're actually very accurate. Everything down to the ticketing system to setting up
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure, all of it was fairly accurate. I'm like, and I was pleasantly surprised by that. Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times, what you read and learn on paper is different than the reality of the situation. But those
Yep.
skills absolutely do translate. And even if it's not exactly the same, it's having at least that foundation makes the learning process and onboarding process a lot easier than you would have without any of
Trust in the
that practice.
process. Trust in your certifications. Trust in your instructors. I say because Wayne probably says this a lot, and maybe some of the other instructors. I think Spurley does this too, where they like he's happy every time that we get something that you beat out someone from like PSU or someone with a 4-year degree. When I was at Cambia, so I was a unified comms engineer. That was top tier in that department. Below that was unified comms operations, and then below that was like desktop folks and like help desk. There was someone that was working around here. I won't mention his name, but he had a 4-year degree in computer science from PSU and was working in the desktop department, making probably half of what I was with my 2-year associate's degree. I had 2 of them technically from Mount Hood, and I was just like, no, I didn't. Wasn't that vicious, but that there's no
Internally,
reason.
though, it's a nice little internal victory right there. You get to like, that's awesome. Like
Wayne likes
I
doing
could have
that
been.
'cause I know, yeah, the 4-year programs kind of try to dunk on us. Well, no, I have a 4-year one at Mount Hood, but the amount of content you get that's pertinent, and this is something that I pushed in the real world, and I do as a board member for y'all, is like the amount you get in 2 years, the experience for the applied section versus because most of the other crap, those 4-year degrees are basically programmer stuff. They don't ever touch switches. They don't touch routers. They don't touch firewalls. If they do, it's theoretical in like a sentence, and that's about it. Now you all have experience, and with certifications, you'll be able to rock it out. So I'm a big fan of every time I see a Mount Hood graduate that is on top of like someone from OSU or U of O that has their 4-year comp sci degree, and you roll in with your I don't think it's measly. I think it's impressive. The security, degree or the networking thing, and then you work above them as an engineer. I'm like, good on you. Yeah, man, get yours. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan because I'm an alumni too. When you guys get those jobs, I'll be like, Mount Hood,
Yeah,
son,
represent.
what up? I like to roll
Yep.
deep. Yeah, I think it's fun.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And too, and the benefit too, you got there, not having to pay as much for schooling right there too. The 4-year program's going to be a lot more expensive, like significantly more.
And there's
Some
there's a
people,
selfish component of it too. So every time that y'all come out of the gate as SOC analyst or entry level security stuff, and you bump that rate up, that helps me too because they look at me and they're like, "Oh, you have a degree from Mount Hood too, Travis." I'm like,
yep.
"Yes, I do."
Hey, scratch my
Open up
back,
that
scratch
piggy
your
bank,
back.
boys. This is gonna be expensive.
Pretty much everybody wins in that situation right there.
Everybody from
And
Mount Hood wins, yeah. And I
yeah,
think the businesses do too, because the quality of the students and the training that you get, I mean, I've seen the quality that's out in the real world is a mixed bag, but the material that you're getting over at that school and the certifications, and I know all the instructors personally, it's like, it's good stuff, man. It's better than there are so few places that actually have degrees in networking and cybersecurity specifically. What most places have is a requirement for a computer science degree of a bachelor's, if they'll even do that. They're like, these people don't know a router from a subnet. So, you having actual one, it's actually focused on networking and cybersecurity, and you have actual hands-on experience with building a firewall, configuring it, doing security, doing pen testing, all the kind of fun stuff. It's like that is not as common as what HR thinks, and that's going to be where your guys' struggle getting in is like, well, but Brad over here went to OSU and he's got computer science degree of 4-year. It's like, okay, cool. Bring a switch in here, put him next to me. Let's see who gets it configured first. I bet he won't be able to do anything, and we'll be able to have this hooked up. And I don't know, give me about 30 minutes and we'll be rocking, and this will be production ready. And y'all will be able to do something very similar. Yeah. Use that as your leverage. Is like, okay, cool. If my competition is someone who programs and this is a cybersecurity job or networking, like, okay, take that gamble if you want. There's a level of confidence that needs to go down, but just know that y'all have that capability. Just roll with it.
yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, is there any other thoughts, comments you have, Travis, at all?
I'm
Anything?
I'm a big fan of follow your passion, right? Is and this comes up a lot in our board meetings. I'm a big fan. Security is a specialty as far as I'm concerned. Security is built upon a foundation of general knowledge in networking and systems. If you don't have that, like, sort of, I understand how Windows work, I understand how networks work, I understand how ports work. You need this basic level, because if you're cybersecurity, you're a digital sheriff at a bank, and you're standing in the front of the bank with your armor saying, no hackers will get in, but you didn't realize that the back of the bank is wide open. It's like, oops. So I guess I didn't know how this worked, and we got pwned hard because I was so focused on the front. I didn't realize that all the friggin' windows are open in the back because I'm a ding dong. Because you don't understand the system, how are you going to protect the system? It's like being a paramedic where you don't understand how the human body works. Like, dog, that's a little important. It's like, his legs chopped off. Is that bad? Like, yeah, it's kind of necessary. You might want to look into that.
Yeah, totally. That ties back to what you're saying too earlier. It's like why it's important to get people in more of a defensive position too before they do something like pen testing, just because they need to understand the system that they're trying to penetrate prior to actually, getting it into the thick of it, right?
Yeah, and that was a big part of how I got to DEF CON. One, it was, and that's the other thing I was talking about, is let your passion guide you. You'll get that base level, get that entry role where you're kind of doing maybe a little jack of all trades type stuff, and then I let the market tell me where I'm going to go, but there's also like the passion, like what are the things you're interested in? Go do that as a side project, make your work-life balance. But if you do something you hate, you're not going to do really well at it because you don't care. But if you
Yeah.
do something you love, you're going to be passionate about it. And then when you go into interview, because I've had times, I got a role, and I'll put the numbers out. It was a solutions architect role for $120,000 plus benefits and bonuses. And the final interview was me and the other director geeking out. He was talking about his LEDs that he's putting on his motorcycle, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this like solar system. We're trying to like generate in the field." We talked nothing about technical. We were just pure passion. I'm like, "Oh dude, what are you doing for colors?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going RGB, but I'm thinking like a green schema." I'm like, "Okay, like you can't do blue and red because that's illegal." So, yeah, I looked at it, and it was just an hour of two dudes just geeking out, and or two people, doesn't matter. Like if you have
Yeah,
passion, people will see that and they will be impressed.
yeah, and that's true because especially too when you look at it, somebody who's passionate about it too, it's gonna be so much easier to train somebody to onboard somebody who's really passionate about the content or the work that they're doing, and it's very it may not be at first easy to distinguish, but it won't take long for to distinguish between somebody who loves what they do for work and somebody who's just doing it for a paycheck, right? And of course, we all want a paycheck, right? We all want to get paid for the work we do, but
Yeah,
you
you don't
also
have to
want to just,
apologize for it, right? I mean, this
yeah,
is the whole deal. People are like, "Oh, are you doing this for money?" Like
yes,
explicitly,
yes,
yes.
yes. It's like, why, what made you want to do this? I'm like, money. But
Yeah,
I also like, the main thing why I chose this to get money, like no matter what
mhm,
I'm going to choose, it's going to be for money, right?
yeah,
The
right.
reason why I chose this is because I really like this stuff. I do this kind of stuff at home all the time. Like, the fact that this is what I do in my off time probably would be not a bad idea to make money off of something like this if I enjoy doing the
Right.
content or whatever.
And you probably already have a cool project that you're working on, and you can just share that in the interview. If it casually comes up, bring it up and focus. These people are like the something that I've kind of learned, and you can kind of take this with a grain of salt, I suppose, is the end product is not as relevant as the process. So
Yeah.
if you're like, oh, because if you want an end product, you want a security solution, go to Best Buy, buy a pre-canned firewall router, whatever, and plug it in. You're done. But if someone's like, yeah, I cooked up, like I have a virtualized firewall that I use, pfSense, is like, here's how I built it. And they're like, I'm interested because that's exotic. And that
Yeah.
in order to even make something like that, it's not like you can just click and it's done. You have to build it yourself. So when you
Yep.
go down the routes of you show your passion through your projects, and your passion, your capabilities are provided by your portfolio and your projects, and that'll open so many more doors than you can even imagine.
It's very true. Like I can give a good example too about that is like what got me into IT in the first place was my passion for video games when I was younger. I love video games, so I'm like, I want to learn how to make a video game. That'd
Mhm.
be so cool if I could make my own. So when I got my first system, when I was 11 years old, when I started learning how to program and how to
Mhm.
code. And of course, the things I made initially were complete garbage, right? Terrible, terrible
Everything's
things.
garbage at first, man. They all
Yeah,
suck. My
just
version went
terrible,
slow.
especially. And so, but every time I started a new project, I was better at programming than I was before. And
A
after a
hubris.
decade and a half of this process, now can it's not only the original programming language I learned. Now every time I learn something new, when I learned HTML, CSS, Java, I'm like, picked it up instantly. Python picked it up instantly. It's
Mhm.
like this stuff will carry over. It's going to start from humble beginnings. It's always going to be very crappy, something's not very good, and it just compounds on itself. Like every time when I was younger, every time I would start a new game, you start making a new game, I was twice as good at programming than I was the previous game I was trying to make. It just kept getting better and better and better. And
Yep.
at those skit and that eventually started rolling out to things that weren't related to programming for me. Okay, how do I start a server? Okay, learned how to port forward, learned how to set
Mm.
static IP address, so on and so forth. These That curiosity will bleed out into other avenues, and the thing is just chase it. Like if you're curious about something, go out and learn more about it. There's no harm. There's no there's nothing bad going to be happening if you go
And
out and learn
yep,
something
and
new.
that's the path, right? That's what I say is like the end result is a direct like series of consequences from the path that you've chosen. The process is more important. It will get you better interviews, it will get you more job offers, it will get you better things
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
it's like the process of learning and growing and iteration. I mean, that's engineering 101 is like here's version 1, it sucked. Here's version 2, it's great. No, it's less sucky than 1. And 3 is less sucky than 2, and eventually you get to a point where like, actually, this is good. This is
Yeah.
not sucky anymore, and then you keep going.
Like, yeah, do you think Gordon Ramsay was able to make his famous beef Wellington like right off the bat? No, it was a
No, he
process.
made
It was a
something that was unedible.
yeah,
My first versions, I had a Dell server that I was running that was it was dirty. My port forwarding was horrible. Like it was insecure. It was garbage tier. But it was like that's that's my legacy, and I just keep iterating, and eventually it became something that was passable. Then it became good, and now it's fantastic. It's like
yep.
yeah, you the
There's
different I've heard the term and I've liked it because I'm starting to get into that role is like the difference between a master and an apprentice is that the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even tried. That's
yeah,
it. I just got more time than y'all. I've
it's
I've eaten my fair share of L's, but as you get older and wiser and more experienced, it's like okay, hey, let's go down this path. Let's try to update the router during lunchtime. No, no, no,
no,
not this time, Satan.
yep.
We're not doing that. I
Learn
know
from
what
the
happens.
yeah, failure's a good teacher, and just like even like you said, that final product is not the especially at the beginning stages, right? It's at the beginning stages when you're entry level or you're still in school learning.
Yep.
It's the best time to make mistakes. The best time
It
to
is absolutely, and I've always had a kind of problem with that. And I've chatted with Jeff Spurley a little bit about this. It's like, hey man, what getting good grades in school means that you passed all your stuff, but this should be an environment in which you shouldn't punish people for failing, assuming they're trying. Like if you're
yeah,
sandbagging, doing nothing or whatever,
yeah,
fine. But
exactly.
but if this is the time for experimentation, you're like, oh, and then as you get wiser, more experienced, whatnot, not only does your success rate go up, but your failures become, you know, less damaging. So it's like,
Yep.
oh, I crashed a plane, but this time I remembered to bring the parachute. So
Yeah.
we call it backing out or rolling back. It's like we do the change, it didn't go so great, but we have that parachute, we roll it back, and then we
Yep.
analyze, okay, cool. So we were down for like 5 minutes. Cool. Okay, we didn't have the parachute. We're down for 5 hours. Oh boy, we're gonna have some fun today. So people, if they're good
Absolutely.
and experienced, they recognize that, hey, yeah, a mistake was made, or so it might have been completely out of your control, but you had that back out method, you had a rollback, you had a safety net, and you deployed the parachute successfully. We did that in aviation a lot. It's like, dude, the ship crashes or the plane crashes, but your parachute deploys and you go home. Cool, man. Like we can
Yeah.
place the plane, but we can't place the person.
Yeah. And from my experience too, it's just been like it's not necessarily you messing up or a mistake happening that's a problem. It's that if you didn't learn from that mistake and repeated it in the
Yeah.
future, yeah,
If you
that's
keep putting
more
the penny
so.
in the light socket, I can't help you. I'll be like, oh,
Yeah,
doing this again, are we? Or failed last time? Oh, this will be different. No, it won't.
that's the major distinguish right there. I feel like is like, yeah, it's like especially too like again like when we're in these entry level positions when the stakes are low for us, we're not dealing with these high level security protocols and whatnot. Like especially if you're working something like help desk or anything like that. Like
Mhm.
this is the time in school or whatever. This is the time to make mistakes because the fallout from your mistakes are not going to be nearly as impactful as when you get into these higher up more technical positions. And
And if
so
and I've seen stuff like that happen where new people were given the keys of the castle and they screwed something up big time. And I've seen businesses try to like punch down on the new people. I'm like, dude, he wasn't ready for it. And your senior people, it's our responsibility to know that we should not give the keys to the Porsche to the new person. It's like they got to
yeah,
earn their keep first, but we have to make sure that they're ready. If we willingly gave them the keys, not having trained you junior people up, that's not on you. that's on us. I take that personally. It's like you and I call people out. I'm like, you screwed up. You're a senior person that didn't train your juniors. That's on you, dude. You take that L hard and you deserve it. Do not punch down on juniors. I never do it and I don't tolerate it ever.
All right. Well, Travis, I want to thank you so much for doing this. By the way, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to get this interview. I hope my group members get to see this video.
Sure.
That they enjoy it. This was very enlightening. Again, I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, and you guys hit me up on LinkedIn, and if you want to add me in, I'll always join in. And if you have issues, you have questions, I mean, I'm on the board, so I'm helping with stuff too. But next on steps is going to be, I think I'm working with Jeff Spurley. I'll have to chat with him about building a voice lab, so you guys can start doing the voice hacking that I do. It's actually a specialty field that technically doesn't really exist. I've kind of made it. So we'll see if DEF CON agrees. They did. ICS Village liked it last time, so maybe they'll like it again. We might see a video. So who knows?
Well, awesome. Sweet. Are you around the campus usually?
Generally not. I'm over about 148th in division, so I'm not too terribly far away. I told them I'm cool with coming in and doing speeches and chats and playing with stuff and, helping people out. I think it's fun.
Cool. Well, I may see you sometime in the future then, if that ever happens.
Sure, man.
But anyways, thank you very much, Travis. Yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day, man.
Sounds good. All right, I'll kill this recording here.
All right.
And
Oh yeah, should probably stop my